Back in 2023, I started recollecting my childhood favorite toy line, G.I. Joe, both the figures and the vehicles. Along the way of recollecting my childhood, I quickly learned that I didn't really know as much as I thought I did. I ran into a few pitfalls and made some mistakes, and I really wasn't ready for how much all of this was going to cost me. If you're looking into getting back into recollecting Joes, then stick around as I'm going to showcase each figure and vehicle I own in a series that I'm calling Recollecting Joes for Beginners in 2025. I examine at what to look for, what to avoid, and what will cost you. So let's start off with one of the original 13 Joes, Rock and Roll. Are you ready? Yo Joe, let's go! When I started to collect G.I. Joe back in 2023 or so, I didn't know much from the toy line except from what I remembered as a kid. And being 10, 11 years old, you don't know much. Obviously, it was my favorite of all time, of all the toy lines. But when I started recollecting G.I. Joe, quickly learned that A, I didn't really know as much as I thought I did about the toy line, and two, or B, I didn't really anticipate what the cost would be with these figures. But I did start to collect, and I'm going to start off this series focusing on Rock and Roll. Why Rock and Roll? Well, he is one of the original 13, and when I say original 13, it was the original 13 G.I. Joe figures that were released in 1982. Rock and Roll was the first one, and the 82 figures are often referred to as the straight arm. As you see here with the arm at the elbow joint, it only swivels up and down. There's no rotation right there to the elbow. And that changed in 1983. Starting in 1983, they started to produce these figures with swiveling elbow joints. And I'll show you here by an example. This is a bat from 1986. And at the elbow joint, you're not going to be able to swivel, as the name suggests, swivel the elbow back and forth. And that added a little bit more of a play feature to the G.I. Joes that were being produced starting in 1983. And in fact, in 1983, they reissued the original 13 G.I. Joes with swivel arms. So there is a 1983 a Rock and Roll with swivel arm. There is a 1983 Stalker with swivel arm, and Scarlet, and the rest of the Joes, Snake Eyes, the original Commando, with a swivel arm. But in 1982, they still didn't have the swivel arm. They also didn't have the neck feature. In this case, the neck sways back and forth. It doesn't, however, go up and down. That would come later, I think, in either 85 or 86. So that came much later. Now, when collecting these Joes, obviously you have to keep in mind that these are toys, pieces of plastic, really, that are 40 plus years old. I mean, in this particular case, we're dealing with a figure that's more than 40 years old, so they're very fragile, and they're going to break quite easily. So when you're looking for a G.I. Joe, just keep in mind of, and even with this figure here, I don't want to push too hard on the limbs because things do tend to break quite easily. So some of the parts that break quite easily, obviously the crotch is one of the pieces that usually breaks quite easily. So you'll find a lot of Joes with broken crotches. You'll find sometimes that there are Joes with some cracked elbows. Looks like right here that Rock and Roll may have a cracked elbow. And you'll also find G.I. Joes a lot of times, because people are now putting these Joes on stands, something we didn't do as children, that their heels are busted. So you always want to make sure that if you're looking for, something that's perfect or quite close to being perfect, that it doesn't have any of those natural breaks that you'll see in these toys. So for example, I have here a Recondo with broken heels, just to see what it looks like. And as you can see, it shatters quite easy, and it makes them really hard to stand on pegs, especially if you end up breaking both of them. I have here also a bat, and I brought out this bat here. Now this bat, this is a figure that I didn't recollect. This is actually from my childhood. This is something that I received Easter of 1986. But as you can see, the crotch is broken. So it's missing the crotch there as well. Another thing as well with these brittle toys and other areas that to look at to see what's broken and what's not are the thumbs. So here you'll have a stalker, and both thumbs have been broken off. And this is really from putting in weapons and taking out weapons, and something that you have to be careful with in doing. But those are sort of the major issues when looking at conditions of G.I. Joe. And looking back at Rock and Roll here, he is in pretty decent condition. So no problems with the peg holes, no problems with the thumbs, no issues with the crotch, and he may have a little bit of a crack, but I don't mind that. If you're collecting to find perfection or the best, then that's something that you'll look at and examine. Now with this particular figure, I don't have him complete. That's another issue of whether or not you're looking for figures that are complete or incomplete. I do have his M60 rifle, and I do have his helmet, but I am missing the little stand, the bipod that goes there on the end. And because I am missing that particular little piece, the figure is a little cheaper to get, but also it's considered to be non-complete. Now, some figures you can go out there and find with the file cards, some not. I'm not a big collector of that. I don't mind if I get my figures without the file cards, and I don't always mind if my figures are not complete. But however, if you are a completionist, then you want to make sure that you take a look at certain and there are websites out there that can help you to see what indeed is complete and what is non-complete. So for example, you can go to 3djoes.com, you can go to yojo.com, and those are two great websites to look at to see what is is considered to be completeness, and whether or not you're looking at a figure that you're thinking about purchasing and whether it's complete and what it's missing. So there you have the figure, and in this particular case, I am focusing on Rock and Roll, and with Rock and Roll, his helmet does come off. So a lot of these Joes, their helmets do come off, and with this particular Joe, the color on this is still great. So a lot of G.I. Joes, because they got left outside and in the sunlight, their color becomes faded. With this particular one, the color still looks great. Also, little helmets like this that are removable, they often get lost as well. So you have to be, and I'm actually going to be, not going to put it on right now, but you have to be careful how you put it on so that you don't lose that brilliance in the color that makes them worth a little bit more. With Rock and Roll, his M60 machine gun, just massive. I don't know if any real human can actually fire off an M60 in real life and remain standing. I don't know, they might be out there, but he has an M60 machine gun. He's got the cool belt line that goes across, and I always thought that was super cool about this particular figure. So he's got his side pouches on his legs, and also on both sides. Got his boots, brown boots. Nothing really spectacular about this figure. Just the fact that he's a cool looking dude, and he's one of the original 13s, and in this particular case he is a straight arm. Now, something I didn't know back when I was a kid, surprisingly, is that another part of the G.I. Joe collection, sometimes when you're looking at purchasing large collections, which might not be a bad idea if you want to take into consideration cost if you buy stuff in bulk, they end up coming out a lot cheaper per figure than buying individually. But people may shy away because the G.I. Joe is broken and not together. And I won't screw around too much with this figure, but inside each G.I. Joe figure are little elastic bands, and they're known as O-rings. And a lot of time these figures, including some modern day figures that are being introduced to the market today, like Delta 17 figures, they're known as O-ring figures because what connects the torso to the legs and the pelvis is a little piece of elastic known as O-ring, and those are actually easy to find online. You can order them on eBay, you can order them on Amazon, and basically this is what it is. It's a little elastic that you put in there, and it's quite easy to replace. If you put that inside, there's a little screw in the back of the G.I. Joe here, and you do have to be careful about the screw, removing the screw, although I'm having a little hard time seeing the screw in this one. It is there. You want to be careful with removing the screw again, because it screws into 40-plus-year-old plastic or 40-year-old plastic, and that sometimes breaks, so you have to be very careful with that. But then actually putting the ring in there is quite easy. There's like a little T-bar in his pelvis, and on the top there's a hook, and you just slide this on the hook, and then there's a little piece of plastic that sticks out where the screw goes in. This goes over. If you want to take a look at how that's done, there's lots of online that you can see how it's done. I used Michael Mercy, sort of one of my favorite toy collectors out there on YouTube, and he has a great episode on how to replace the O-ring, and as well, a little bit more difficult but not impossible, also replacing the little broken bar sometimes that breaks in there that hooks up to the leg. And I've replaced one of those as well. It's a little harder, and you can't buy that piece individually. Although I have seen on Amazon sets where you can buy the T-bars and also the O-rings. So it is out there if that's something that you're looking into. So that's some of the things to look at in these figures. And just going back again to purchasing the figures, it is sometimes best, like I said, to just buy a box, even if it seems like the figures are broken. They're not. A lot of times it's just replacing the O-ring, and that's really easy to do. You can easily pick up one of these O-rings for cheap on Amazon or on eBay, and just replace them, and you'll have a pretty good figure. So if the figure looks good in condition otherwise, except it's apart, it's in 3 pieces or in 2 pieces, and it's just an issue of the O-ring, it's easy to collect. So in this particular case, Rock and Roll, one of the original 13, he's featured in the first few Marvel comics that were released. Of course, the G.I. Joe line, when it came out, cartoons, from my understanding, weren't really allowed to advertise toys, so they had to be a bit more creative, and then they hired Marvel to do comic books for them. So Rock and Roll is heavily featured in the G.I. Joe comic book, and in particular, he's I think it's issue 35. He's heavily featured in that issue, and he's usually featured with the Ram Cycle, or riding the Ram Cycle as being his vehicle, and that's why I have that out here. And we could take a look at this cycle later on some other time, other episode. And then in the Sunbow cartoon, he's usually featured, but mostly in the background. So by the time the Sunbow cartoon rolls around, I think it's in 1983 that the Mass Device, which is a 5-episode series, comes out, and it comes out on Saturday mornings. I remember watching them as a child. And Rock and Roll is featured mostly in the background and not so much one of the main characters in the show. He's a little bit more featured in episode 4 of the Mass Device, and I know it because I just watched it not that long ago. Again, it's not one of the core figures or personalities of G.I. Joe. He's not a Snake Eyes or Duke or Stalker or Scarlet Flint, but he's just one of those guys that is in the background, and some guy, one of the guys that I really, really liked as a child. So I'm going to throw up some comps up there from eBay, just to see just to show you what they're going for today. And I'm going to throw up some comps of Complete. So that includes the M60 with the bipod, which you don't see here, as well with this helmet, and that will be considered a complete rock and roll. There are some prices, and the prices are always very surprising, always based on condition, always based on whether there is something missing or not, whether it's complete or not from the figure. In this particular case, even putting his M60 in his hand, I'm just so careful with it, and you'll hear a lot of complaints about this, that he's so hard to pose with the M60, and he looks strange, and he does actually look strange because you can't swivel his arm, so you can't turn it in. So usually I just have him holding it in his hand. It keeps his thumbs protected, and still looks okay for posing when I have him in my diorama. So in this particular case, I'm missing the bipod, and if I were to go out there and just buy the bipod, that would be expensive, considering it's a little tiny piece of plastic, maybe an inch long, if that, inch wide, if that, which goes on the end of the M60 gun. Now that it depends on whether it's original or something that's not original. So there are a lot of people out there that do reproductions. So people nowadays with 3D printing and the new technology that exists, there are people out there that do these things. And I've often used a fellow from Spain, of all places, who does these repro things. Missing pieces on items, some stickers as well for certain vehicles, and you pay a lot less, but it's a repro. And if that's something that doesn't bother you, like it doesn't bother me, then I do it just to completion, if I intend to have that particular figure completed. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with repos, and if you're going to resell, then you have to be clear about the fact that not all of the figure is original. Trust me, people out there are very good at telling the difference between repro and original, and you don't want to get caught trying to sell something as original when in fact it is a repo. Let me put this guy back up here. So where do I get these toys from? You'll find out very early on that once you start collecting, that there is a large community in your city or in your state or in your province, wherever you live. And the community is really great. So you usually find a lot of individuals that sell these from their own private collections. Some buy and resell. I go to eBay for a lot of my stuff. eBay is great to purchase, and it's great to sort of find comparable sales, so you'll know what the price is if you're buying from a private individual, or if you're going to a toy show or a vintage toy store. Then I would recommend that you look at eBay to see what these things are selling for. Now, there's a difference between people putting things up for sale and putting whatever number they want to, and what it's being sold for. So always take a look at the sold category for that individual, and trust me, everything G.I. Joe is on eBay, and you're going to know what the price is of what it's sold for. You want to stay away from what people are just asking, or the general for sale list, because anybody can put anything on there. And then again, most of the items are clearly marked as being complete or not, but you still have to be wary out there for the fact that some people aren't honest, and they don't tell you about the problems. For example, just going back to my Recondo, he did have pictures, and he clearly did state in his ad, the person I bought it from, you see what you get in the pictures. Well, he didn't have any pictures of the bottom of his feet, and the bottom of his feet obviously are broken. and that's something I didn't see in the pictures. So you want to make sure that if you can't see in the pictures their elbows, their crotch, their thumbs, both their thumbs, and the bottom of the feet, then ask for pictures of it. Always ask. And that's something that I've learned in buying G.I. Joes online. If I don't see those usual problem areas, then I go ahead and ask. And with things like O-rings, you can't tell. I mean, you might get a figure that's completely loose, won't even be able to stand on its own because it needs a new O-ring. But with O-rings, I'm not as concerned because I'm at the point now where I can easily change and replace the O-rings, and trust me, I'm all thumbs. So if I can do it, I think that as long as you have working hands and thumbs, you should, and fingers, you should be able to do it as well. Keep in mind that if you are buying from eBay, you're going to pay sales tax. So that depends on where you live. It can be anywhere from, I don't know, depending on what state, what province, what country you live in. So there's always going to be tax on top of it. And that will come at the end, just before you hit the purchase button. It'll show everything on there. As well, the big one is always the shipping costs. So shipping costs can be really outrageous. Sometimes it can be even more than what you're purchasing for the figure itself. You want to keep that in mind. And of course, nowadays, if you're doing international purchases to and from the US to any other country, keep in mind that you might be surprised when you go pick up your mail and you have to pay some duties, some extra tariffs on things, because that's just the world we live in today. So you definitely want to keep all that in mind. Just the prices that you see there, and on eBay you'll show the before you purchase, it'll show not only the price of the item, of the figure, but it'll show the price of the shipping charges. What it won't show you are the surprises. So the taxes will be shown just before you hit the purchase. The tariffs, my experience so far, they don't show it, especially if I'm buying something from the States, living up here on the west coast of Canada. And sometimes I might be surprised. There might be some extra shipping costs if they use DHL, for example. And I have no control. If the seller decides to use DHL, then I have to pay an extra shipment cost. And they haven't been too outrageous at this point, up to about $5 or so. So it hasn't been that crazy in paying those extra shipping costs. But I don't know, I haven't bought anything since the new tariff rules came in from the US. And if you're in the US buying from Canada or for some Mexico or other countries as well, you might be hit with paying duties once you go pick up your figures. So just keep that in mind. But eBay is still great because it does provide you with comparable prices of what things are being sold for recently. And if you do see something that hasn't been sold in a while, then take that in mind, or keep that in mind when you go and purchase the item from a private seller, because that'll tell you that it's something that's not real popular these days, and chances are that the item is worth less than what it last sold for. So if something hasn't sold in 6, 7, 8 months, a year, then just keep that in mind. It may be something that's not as popular as it once used to be. So eBay is a great tool. Use it. Where I get my toys from, or my G.I. Joe collection from, and other toys as well. Other than eBay, again, I've met a few people in my local G.I. Joe community, people that have G.I. Joes and sell them, and also there's vintage toy shops. I'm very fortunate that I had, not until very long ago, 2 of them within walking distance. Now I only have one, but it's one that I drop in every once in a while just to see what they have, if they have something missing from my collection. And then there's toy conventions. So always toy conventions all over the place now throughout all of North America. We have 2 big ones in the big city out here on the west coast, being Vancouver, a year. And then there's a smaller one being much closer to where I live, which is like a 10-minute drive away. We have that once a year as well. So as long as you go into these conventions, you know what you want to purchase, then do some research beforehand. Take a look at eBay comps, see what it costs, and then you can go out there and you're not gonna you're not going to regret buying something for a lot more than what it's worth when you come to figure out the price. And sometimes, you just want the figure, and you want to splurge and you really don't care either. I've been in that situation as well. So just keep that in the back of your head. Also, I've also done it at conventions where I'm looking at something and I don't know what the price of it is. I just quickly on my phone look up eBay, look at what it sold for in the last month or so, and then I'll know right away if the price that's being asked is fair, or if it's unfair, or if I'm getting a really great deal. And sometimes that happens too. So there we go. So that's some of the things to look at. Some of the figures that I've shown here. I've shown at least 4, though my focus was mostly on rock and roll, and I wanted to focus on a figure that doesn't have a whole lot of accessories, so I could easily go over everything, because I wanted to talk about things like O-rings and what to look for when purchasing these items. So I'll be moving on to some other figures here in the future with some upcoming episodes. If there's a particular figure that you want me to examine and go over, let me know, and I will see if I have that figure and if I can do an episode on it. When you're taking a look at the comparable prices that I'm putting up, just keep also in mind that these are Canadian funds. These are Canadian dollars, so you always want to just do the change, usually about 30% or so off of what the conversion from Canadian dollar to US dollar. If you take off 30% of the price that you see there, that's what it's going to cost you in American dollar. Usually. Not always, so just keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of apps out there that you can easily do conversion from Canadian dollar to a US dollar. Again, just keep in mind that I'm using Canadian dollars here in my videos. All right, well, folks, until next time, happy memory hunting.